Trish and Rob MacGregor welcome you to a place where all kinds of phenomena flourish. Voices whisper ancient secrets, signs and symbols are abundant. UFOs, ETs, ghosts, and even the dead move about freely. Here we meet authors, researchers, and investigators of the mysterious, the strange, and of the inexplicable anomalies that surround us. Step out of the everyday world and take a journey into the mystical underground.
Guys, if you're ready, we'll get started in 3, 2.
Welcome to the Mystical Underground. Thank you for joining us. This is Rob MacGregor
and Trish MacGregor
and our producer and tech magician, John Posey. You can go to themysticalunderground.com where we make regular blog posts and where you can find out about our books. Among them are Phenomena, Harnessing Your Psychic Abilities, The Secrets of Spirit Communication, Sensing the Future, and Aliens in the Backyard. Our latest book is called Mind-Blowing Synchronicities, the latest science, stories, and research. Trish's latest novel is Silent Thunder. Rob's upcoming novel is called The Alchemist's Bloom. If you are watching us on YouTube, we would appreciate it if you would take a second to click the like, subscribe, and notification buttons so you never miss an episode. If you prefer to listen to the show, it is available wherever you listen to podcasts. Please subscribe there.
Our guest today is Graham Phillips, one of Britain's best-selling nonfiction authors, a former radio journalist and broadcaster for the BBC, and founder of Strange Phenomena magazine. He's a historical investigator of unsolved mysteries. In other words, he's been very busy. The author of many books, including The Temples and the Ark of the Covenant, The Last Tomb of King Arthur, The End of Eden and Atlantis, and The 10 Plagues of Egypt. Graham lives in the Midlands of England. The book we're going to talk about today is The Original Zodiac, What Ancient Astrology Reveals About You. Welcome, Graham. It's a pleasure.
Welcome, Graham.
Thank you very much. Great to be on.
I have a question right off the bat. Okay, what's your sign in the Western Zodiac, and what is it in this original Zodiac?
In the Western one, it's Virgo.
Okay.
I'm born on the 31st of August. And in the new...
Same as our daughter.
Really?
Yeah, that's cool.
How strange.
Yes. She's
Well,
younger than you are, though.
Synchronicity.
In the original Zodiac, which we'll be talking about, I and she would also be the Swan.
Swan, that's interesting.
That is interesting. She lives in Orlando, and they just had a huge die-off of swans there from bird flu.
Yeah, black swans.
Yeah.
They're rare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a lake in the center of the city, downtown, and there's all these wild swans out there. You're walking on the path, and you see all these swans, white and black swans. And, they had this die-off in the bird flu.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, it is sad. Okay, so.
What does the swan mean?
Yeah, tell us about this.
Well, the Swan basically, in a simple explanation, is that the people who devised this original Zodiac chose animals that best symbolize the traits of the people born at that time. And the swan is a very graceful creature in the air and on water, but waddles about on land. So similarly, people born in that sign take a bit of time to get going on something. They can be out of their depth, if you like, unless things start to move. Once they get going, they're brilliant, but they take a bit of time to get going. That's certainly true with me. I don't know.
That sounds like Megan too. That's interesting.
Right, yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rob.
Well, I was just going to say she's had this like 2.5 weeks to get to work on this new project, and she said, "I'll start Monday."
There you go. That's me.
Yeah. All right. So, how does the Virgo compare to Swan then? In
Well, it's a bit of, I mean, basically, I'd ought to explain sort of how this original zodiac works, if that's
And they're
okay.
both they're both Earth signs, right? The Swan is an Earth sign.
They don't really have Earth signs and
okay.
signs and things like that in the original zodiac. But the way it works is, instead of being divided into 12 separate constellation signs, it's divided into 18. And if you look at the stars of the zodiac, they don't really look much like the signs they're supposed to be. I mean, the sign of Aries, for example, the stars that make up Aries is just a kind of funny, zaggy line. It doesn't look anything like a ram. But what happened when the ancient Greeks, who are the people who designed the zodiac we have now, they looked at the sky, and the band of sky where the sun and the moon and the planets all move around, which is called the ecliptic, which is basically a kind of, all the planets and everything go round the sun in a roughly kind of flat plane. So when you see from Earth, wherever these planets are or where the sun is, it's going to be in one of these areas that's in this zodiac band, if you like. There are lots of other constellations below and above it, constellations like Orion and the Big Dipper, but they're not part of the zodiac where all the planets and the moon and everything seem to move. But they designed it into 12 signs, broke the zodiac up into 12 equal parts, because they had 12 months, and their months corresponded to our zodiac signs today. Now, earlier than that, they had 18. They had 18 separate segments of the year, or months, if you like, although they weren't corresponding with the moon. And so the stars they chose for each individual segment were some from perhaps one of our zodiac signs and some from another. Some of them were basically two of our zodiac signs, and they So in Virgo, you were asking about how Virgo is similar to the Swan. Well, Virgo on, and a bit of the next sign that comes after it, I'm just checking out here, which is the crane, another bird. So some people in Virgo will be part of the crane, and some people will be part of the Swan. So there are similar traits I've found. For example, in the Swan, one of the traits is certainly that people are finicky and they're very fussy about their, about how they go about doing things. That's the same with the Swan, like it preens its feathers and makes sure it looks better than every other bird.
Yeah, that's the details. Yeah. Interesting. Well, how'd you get interested in all this?
Well, it goes back to I've been doing this on and on for about whatever the 1990s were, 30 odd years ago. I was investigating a book about Alexander the Great, the Greek warrior. And he lived around about around about 333 BC is when he was kicking around. And he conquered half the known world at that time, which included Babylon, which was in what is now Iran. And it was the biggest, poshest city in the world, basically, at the time. And while he was there, he came across astrologers who told him that, no, you lot in Greece, you use a 12-sign zodiac. We've got an 18-sign one. And I thought, it'd be interesting to find out what that is. And although scribes of Alexander mentioned this 18-sign zodiac, they didn't actually explain what the actual signs were. So I started to try and look into that and found that as an ancient carved stone from Babylon, dating back about 5,000 years, did mention at least it explained how the zodiac was divided up into these 18 signs. But it didn't actually name what the signs were. It said they were all represented by creatures, wild animals that best represented the traits of the people born at that time, but it didn't actually explain what they were. So that's how I started, and it wasn't until relatively recently, until about 2010, when the ruins of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey were excavated, that they actually found representations of these early animals that form the zodiac. Because the area that we're talking about, which used to be called Mesopotamia, included Babylon, modern Iran and Iraq, right up into eastern Turkey. And so this discovery at Göbekli Tepe showed animals carved on stones. We could work out from that what these 18 animals were, and that dates way back, way before ancient Egypt even, way before the Sumerians and first civilizations in India. It goes back over 10,000 years to when these people were first using this 18-sign zodiac.
Wow. Well, how did you research it from that? I mean, did you go to Turkey?
No, there's a person that I do a lot of research with on various books, a man called Andrew Collins. I don't know if you've had him on your show at all. He's another English researcher like me, and he's had many books out about ancient civilizations. And he is one of the world's leading experts on what was found at Göbekli Tepe. Now, I was doing research into the ancient Greeks and ancient Babylonians to find out, what they, any references to this early zodiac. And he suddenly said to me, you were looking for that zodiac. Well, it seems that these creatures that are actually carved into these stones at Göbekli Tepe, this ancient temple, a sort of Stonehenge, if you like, but like if you imagine a series of different Stonehenges, all half buried under the ground, that's kind of what Göbekli Tepe is like. But instead of just being bare stones, they're carved with these incredible animals. And he said, I think that these are these creatures that you've been looking for. So he helped me do the research from the Turkey point of view. Then all I had to do is to try and work out what each of these signs had, because there was no actual writing to tell us how they interpreted each of these signs. That was my next task.
Well, no wonder this is taking you since 1990. That's pretty involved. Wow.
So how did you do it? How did you come up with these meanings? Was it like...
Well, I started doing it the long, hard way. I thought, okay, let's see how the ancient Greeks, which we do know about how they worked out the zodiac signs, how they did it first. So, okay, they basically said the way that they actually divided the zodiac up is that they thought where the sun happens to be in the zodiac at a particular time of the year, that influences your personality and characteristics. There's other things like planets and the moon and everything. Right. They could influence characteristics. They also influence what was going to happen in the future as far as the Greeks were concerned. But primarily, the personality and characteristics that people had was based on where the sun was. So if it was in Leo, they said that they didn't look at the stars of Leo. And, they looked, that's the segment of the sky that the sun is in when people are born at that particular time of the year, when Leo is. But they didn't actually think the stars looked like a lion. They roughly made them into the shape of a lion just so they could remember what that particular that zodiac sign was. But the way they worked out it was a lion, and they write about this saying, well, the people born then had lion-like characteristics. They were brave. They were good leaders. Somebody born in Aries, for example, the ram, they charge in where others fear to tread, and this sort of thing. So I thought, okay, if that would be the same with this earlier zodiac, this very ancient one, then whatever the 18 signs were, I was able to work out that the first one, for example, which starts on March the 21st and goes through till April the 9th, that's a spider. Then you've got the next one, which is an aurochs, which is an ancient sort of buffalo. That goes from April the 10th until May the 3rd, and so on. And I thought, okay, what would the person with spider-like characteristics be like? Okay, presumably like a spider can spin a web. They're considered to be creative. I mean, in the ancient world, the spider was a sign of creativity. It was a sign of solitude. Spiders don't swarm like bees or ants do. They don't work in great big colonies. They're isolated individual creatures. So maybe the person born in with that sign would be more of a sort of loner in many ways. Okay, but surely we've got to be able to find more than that. So I thought, okay, if it works, and the ancient Greeks, what they did is they went round seeing what people had, what traits born in that particular time. And then what they did is they basically, over many, many years, made notes of all these traits and made charts of them all. I thought, what I have to do is to interview loads of people and find out, okay, person born in the spider, what are your likes, dislikes? Are you sporty? Are you artistic? Etc., etc., etc. And this was taking forever.
I can imagine.
So that's how I started it. But it's only been in the last couple of years I've been able to properly do this book because of the invention of AI. I suddenly realized I don't have to go around interviewing hundreds of people over many, many years. I can simply ask an AI, like ChatGPT or any of these ones, simply to say, okay, give me 100 famous people born between that date and that date.
Oh, wow.
All right, give me 200. Okay, you've got these people. These are the characteristics. Do they share any characteristics in common as far as sports concerned, as far as art, music, blah, 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 blah. And it could be done. So it wasn't until now, even though I started in the 1990s, it wasn't until now I could really put this whole thing together.
Oh,
Wow.
that's
So
fascinating.
there you go.
Well, good old ChatGPT. I love it.
But Trish has found some of the information on astrology isn't as accurate, at least from her point of view, when she looks things up. Is that correct?
Well, I don't look up people like what he was doing.
Yeah, that's a different issue. Yeah. That's interesting. So it seems like it's a combination then, the meaning of these 18 signs, a combination of logic and intuition and AI.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, take for the spider. I've got down here, for example, I'm just looking at some of the people that came up in being born in that sign, some famous people everyone will know. I mean, basically give you some idea about the spider. It's a solitary creature with a remarkable ability to create an extraordinary web. Likewise, people born in that sign seem to be particularly artistic, for example. They also, people who are loners, they tend to work best alone, but they perform very well. Now, here's some people who are famous spiders. Gary Oldman, Johann Sebastian Bach,
Wow.
Andrew Lloyd Webber, Elton John. There's a lot of musicians and pretty famous ones born at that time. Lady Gaga, Diana Ross.
Wow.
Wow.
This is March 31st. What date?
This is between March 21st and April 9th.
Huh. So it'd be an
Then you've
Aries
got-
and Western.
when is your birthday?
I'm June 7th.
June 7th. Let's have a look what that one is. June. Here we go. You are a vulture.
Oh, no.
That's not a bad thing. The vulture to the ancient
you joke.
Mesopotamian was considered to be the wisest creature. The actual shamans, the people who were the priests of Mesopotamian civilization, used to wear like vulture wing feathers in cloaks because the vulture was considered to be the most powerful mystical creature. They symbolized foresight. Individuals born under this sign share an adventurous spirit coupled with thought and pre-planning. They may be courageous, but they're also careful. They're practical, intuitive. They're driven by natural curiosity. They are very artistic. Famous people: Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes. Bob Dylan. There you go. John F. Kennedy, Clint Eastwood, Morgan Freeman.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, what's May
And
16th, Rob?
which one are you, Bob?
I'm May 16th, Taurus. May 16th.
May 16th. Let's have a look what that one says. April, May. May 16th. You're a creature called the Mouflon, which is a wild sheep, but it's not sort of, these things were big and tough and had huge, great sort of horns. In Mesopotamian tradition, the sheep were considered helpful spirit animals. They are intermediaries between heaven and earth. They're great communicators. They're the people who have they're one of the most psychic signs, apparently. Most people born in this sign have some ability in the mystical side. The spirit Mouflons of legend in Mesopotamian legend inspired foresight. They're romantic, they have alluring personalities, and they have great charisma. Here's some famous Mouflons for you. Here we go. Salvador Dali.
Oh, wow.
The artist. People born in this sign tend to have a very unusual way of going about things, but can become very famous for their individual creativity. But at the same time, they're very caring. Florence Nightingale, another one born in this sign. And if you're hoping to get rich, Mark Zuckerberg was born in this sign.
Right, yeah. How do you spell this, Mouflons?
Mouflon.
Okay.
It's an ancient wild sheep. It's extinct now.
Okay, wow.
Just
I think it is.
Just real quick, and maybe this is something that should have been obvious, or maybe I'm completely off base, but just the way you were describing how the ancient Greeks collected this information, and then the way you've conducted your research, it just had never occurred to me that maybe on some level astrology is a cross section of astronomy and sociology. I don't know. Anyways. Something
That's
I've heard.
it. John, give me your birth date.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, yes, I agree.
And August 12th for me. Yeah.
Okay, August 12th.
August 12th. Are you going to be the Swan? No, you're not. I'm at the very beginning of the Swan. Are you Leo?
Right.
Yes.
I am.
Because you're the lion in this one too. But in this case, it's a lioness, not a lion with the mate. People born under this sign can be highly imaginative, yet remain securely grounded. It's a sign where people don't like to get too carried away with ideas in their mind. They want to have practical applications for what they do. They can be very creative, but they also have materialist attributes. They're very good at making money. They can become very headstrong. They're the kind of people who don't like to be argued with. They're powerful. They can make great leaders. They're also the kind of people who come up with ideas that other people just haven't come up with, and do things in a very different way. Famous lions: Alfred Hitchcock, Madonna, Usain Bolt, the fastest man alive. If you want to
have a whole lot, I do not have a whole lot in common with him. Definitely not. I might be the slowest person alive. But go ahead, sorry.
What was the other?
Robert De Niro is one.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
Some of those attributes sound like you, I think, John.
It's except for the money part. Hadn't really got a hold of that one yet.
Right. Yeah.
Well, some of the ones sound like you too, Rob.
Yeah, I guess so. Cool. I never heard of the Mouflons before, but now I'm going to have to look
me
them
neither.
up.
I got to look them up.
Yeah. Yeah.
How have you used this? I mean, for yourself personally.
I haven't yet. I mean, I only just finished doing it. The book has only just come out. I've still to actually get any sort of feedback from other astrologers. Well, I'm not an astrologer, but from astrologers to say, well, I'm not having this or whatever. I mean, the fact is, I'm not questioning anybody else's form of astrology, be it sort of Vedic astrology from India or, the traditional Greek Zodiac or anybody else's. It's just that I found this fascinating. It's not the normal thing I do. My normal research is researching ancient civilizations. I went searching, for example, for the Ark of the Covenant.
Right.
By following all sorts of biblical clues. I didn't find it, but I found out an awful lot about it. I went searching for the Holy Grail. I did find a cup which may have actually started certain Grail legends during the Middle Ages. So that's the sort of thing. I have been described as a real-life Indiana Jones. So sitting down and working out a Zodiac is totally new to me.
I was about to say, bringing up the Grail with Rob on the podcast. Yeah.
He wrote 6 original Indiana Jones books based on the character.
Yeah.
Rob.
Well, and specifically the novelization of the Last Crusade, which revolved around the Grail. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, going back, wow. I mean, whenever the third Indiana Jones film came out, no, the fourth, hold on, the first one is in Ark of the Covenant. The second one, he looks for the stones in India. Then he's doing the Ark. No, then he's doing the Grail, and then he goes in search of some crystal skulls a crystal skull. Yeah. When that one came out in the days where people still had DVDs, Lucasfilms bought out a DVD set, of all 4 films, plus a kind of bonus couple of discs, the making of the films, and also there was a documentary they put together about 4 people who had actually searched for these things. They had one guy who'd been to India searching for mystical stones, and they'd had somebody else who had looked for crystal skulls. But they chose me as a person who'd actually looked for and found something which may have been an inspiration for the Holy Grail. So, and what I found fascinating is, I did this Grail research way back before the Indiana Jones film about the Grail, before the Indiana Jones film about the Grail.
Did you find it physically?
Yeah, well, what happened was, during the Middle Ages, there were a bunch of people, of some knights who came from part of central England, not too far from where I live. And they had they went on the Crusades. They came back and claimed that this small little green cup they found had once belonged to Mary Magdalene, and it had been used as, it had been her scent jar. And as a follower of Jesus, she was the person who was the first person to see the risen Christ, according to the Bible, when he left the tomb. And according to ancient Christian tradition, this small scent jar she had, called an alabastrum, it's talked about in the Bible, she used this scent jar to collect a few drops of his blood. Now, the idea then is when she hid it somewhere in Jerusalem. That was the earliest stories of the Grail, is that she was the one who had this small cup that collected the blood. It had a little kind of top to it as well, so, could keep it like a perfume jar. Only later did the stories come about that Joseph of Arimathea, another of Jesus's followers, used the cup that Jesus had at the Last Supper to collect his blood. So there was like 2 Grails, if you like, in the original story. But these knights in around about 1100 on the Crusades came to Jerusalem. They managed, they believed, to find this little cup that had belonged to Mary Magdalene, came back to England, to a place called Whittington in central England, where they started to say to people, we have got the original Holy Grail. And even if they did or didn't, it inspired a lot of the stories of King Arthur and his knights searching for the Grail, which is fascinating. So I wonder whatever happened to this thing, that may have started the Grail stories. And there was the people who found it, their family's name was Fitzwarine. Now, their last direct descendant, the name Fitzwarine had gone by this point, but there was a man called Thomas Wright in the middle of the 1800s who had this, still had this little cup that his ancestors had found in Jerusalem. And he had no children to hand it on to. So what he decided to do was to hide it somewhere and leave a whole series of clues as to where it was. He saw himself as some kind of latter-day Merlin. Well, no one had managed to find this as far as I knew. So back in the 1990s again, I decided to kind of go and search of this thing. And the clues that he left included a stained glass window that he designed and had installed in his local church at a place called Hodnet, near where he lived. And this stained glass window basically showed Mary Magdalene holding this cup and all sorts of things. I won't go into the whole story because it'll go on forever. But what I was going to say about the Indiana Jones thing, when they chose me to be the person that sought a real grail, I didn't realize until that point that when Indiana Jones and his dad, Sean Connery, goes searching for the grail, the clues they find are in a stained glass window. Right. So when they made this documentary, they showed Indiana Jones looking at this stained glass window, then showed me looking at this stained glass window. But this stained glass window eventually led to an old statue that was in a cave not far away. And I discovered that the cup had been found in that cave by accident in 1920 by a local businessman. I managed to trace his great-great-granddaughter. I actually have this thing here. She actually had it in the loft of their house, and they just thought it was some old egg cup or something. And this is what it looks like. Wow. It does just look like an egg cup.
It's just so little.
It's so little. But when I took this to the British Museum, I didn't say to them, "Is this a grail or what?" I just said, "This is found under unusual circumstances. Do you know what it is?" And immediately they said, "That's a Roman scent jar. It's probably around about 2,000 years old." They looked at this alabaster that it's made from, and they said, "That's probably coming from somewhere like Palestine, Jerusalem, that area." So it's actually the right place and the right time to have been associated with Jesus. Now, I'm not saying it was, but this is certainly the thing that was found by these knights and the thing that sparked a lot of the King Arthur stories of the Grail.
Now, there's nothing in it. I mean, is there any, like, blood stains?
No, I mean, there's nothing. I mean, it's been tested. There's nothing. It's been kicking around all over the place for years. There seems to have once been a little top to go on the, on the top of it. Little, thing to keep it closed. But, so there you go. That's the kind of thing I normally do.
Well, not obviously, so not to try and belabor the Indiana Jones point, but that was my favorite part of the climax of the movie. Just the fact that the businessman goes in thinking that he's going to get, he's looking for the cup of a king, and that's the catch was Indy's like, "No, I'm looking for the cup of a carpenter." Yeah, so.
That is a simple cup. I mean, if it had belonged to Mary Magdalene, she wasn't rich.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's interesting.
Well, what else do you do in your spare time when you're not looking for the Grail? That's incredible.
Well, what have I done? Okay, I've been searching for King Arthur himself. Obviously, the Grail ties up with the Arthurian stories. The thing about King Arthur is everyone said, he didn't exist, he was just made up. Well, obviously the character you see in the movies, this guy in shining armor, fighting dragons and rescuing damsels in distress and so forth, obviously that he didn't exist. But what is interesting is, I mean, the story about Arthur comes around originally in about the 1100s in Europe. And people in France and Germany and England start writing about this British king who lived around 1,500 years ago, who invaded the country. And then people started adding all sorts of fictitious things to it, like fighting dragons and you name it. But what's fascinating is that if you go back way before that, 300 years before that, in the early 800s, there's a monk in Britain. I mean, Britain, after the Roman Empire had collapsed in the 400s, there was what they call the Dark Ages, or the early medieval period, where people went back to living in mud huts, basically, in many places. And in Britain, law and order had collapsed, and people were invading from all over the place, from Ireland, from Scandinavia, Germany, France. And somebody was trying to unite the Britons, who'd no longer got an army to defend them because the Romans had gone. And according to some guy who wrote in 830, a monk called Nennius, the person who united the Britons at that time was a man called Arthur. And he wasn't a man in shining armor, and that from that period, he would have looked more like a Roman soldier. They didn't live in huge Gothic castles, but wooden stockades. And perhaps instead of palaces, they would have had something more like Roman villas. And this character is like a historical figure upon whom the story was based. So I decided to go in search of him. ultimately, I found archaeologists. I worked with archaeologists, and they uncovered a city, an old Roman city, of which the walls still survive, in countryside, not far from this same place where the Grail story started, in central England. And the archaeologists showed that at exactly the time Arthur lived, this old Roman city was completely rebuilt and became the capital of Britain at that time. So if Arthur existed, he probably came from there. And what was fascinating is that people were saying, "Oh no, I won't have this. There's no real Arthur." They said, who did rule from there at that time? Well, records were scanty because it was the Dark Ages. There wasn't a lot preserved. But there was a series of genealogies, family trees, that said that the man that ruled there was called Owen Llan Gwyn. So I thought, well, it's obviously not Arthur. But then I found the writings of another monk called Gildas, who refers to Owen Llan Gwyn, saying that he had a battle name of an animal, the bear. And in Brythonic, and still preserved in Welsh, the word bear at that time was Arth, and Arthur means the bear. Owen Llan Gwyn, who ruled from the most powerful city in the country at the time, Arthur is said to rule from the most powerful city in the country, had the name Arthur. And what clinched it was his father had the title, the Terrible Head Dragon. Translate that into Brythonic, and it's Uther Pendragon, the name of Arthur's father.
Wow. That's interesting.
My God, what?
Yeah.
This is so complicated. How do you keep all this stuff straight? I mean, you keep notes.
With great difficulty. The older I get, anyway.
Yeah. So what about?
I mean, it's the detail-oriented Virgo part of you should be able to.
Yeah.
So have you pursued Merlin as well?
Yes, I have, and this is the part that I wrote a book a few years ago that was published by an American publisher, in a tradition, same one as published this book.
Yeah.
They do great books.
They do. I've been published by many publishers, but for America, they are the best ones I've had out of there.
Yeah.
And they published this book because they were fascinated by the idea that I had that Merlin could have had some connections with America. Now, the book was called Merlin and the Discovery of Avalon in the New World. Now, it probably just sounds completely nuts, but I'll explain it. As far as history is concerned, the people from Europe who first discovered America were the Vikings, somewhere around about 1000 AD. Now, there are a number of references to earlier voyages that may have reached America. Now, they didn't sail straight across the Atlantic like Christopher Columbus later did. They island hopped. They set off from Europe. There's a series of islands north of Scotland. You've got the Faroe Islands, and you've got other islands up there, the Orkney Islands, the Shetland Islands, and then you've got Iceland, and then you can get across Greenland. And you can kind of do that, certainly at a time, going back 1,500 years, when the weather was a lot better than it is today. Okay, right. So did this happen? Well, interestingly, there's a story, there's many stories were written during the Dark Ages about Merlin before they were even, Arthur is recorded by this guy, as I mentioned, as being an historical figure who fought battles and united the Britons. But all the kind of legends about him and what he might have done, they weren't written till much later. But Merlin, he's actually recorded as doing all sorts of weird and wonderful things before Arthur's recorded as doing weird and wonderful things. He's recorded in a couple of documents that still survive in the British Library as living around 500 AD, the same time as Arthur is said to have lived. And rather than being a wizard, he was what they called a bard. He was a sort of druid. He was somebody who was like a court advisor to kings and princes. And when Britain was divided into lots of smaller kingdoms, all the chieftains had their bard or advisor who was credited with second sight and mystical powers, and hence where the idea of Merlin being a wizard comes from. So, okay, now this guy Merlin, he's written about in an early Welsh story. Now, Wales is in the western part of England. The people who are now the English actually came from Germany. They're called the Anglo-Saxons. The original Britons were pushed westward into Wales, and that's where legends survived. And there's a reference to a man called Merlin. Now, it may not be the same Merlin as Arthur's Merlin, because Merlin, again, is a title. It means the eagle. There's still a small bird of prey called the Merlin today. A lot of these people, where they're mystics, warriors, kings, had battle names or honorific titles after animals that they were thought to be like Arthur may be strong, so he's the bear. And then you've got Merlin, the wise eagle who can see all. So there were a couple of figures who had the title Merlin. So it may not have been the one that's associated with Arthur, right, but it's around the same time. Okay, what does this story say about him? He says that towards the end of his life, he sailed off to Avalon. Now, Avalon is supposed to be this land across the sea where all sorts of mystical things happen, a land across the west, to the western seas of Britain. But he first sails to Ireland. Now, in Ireland, there is also references to a man called Meradorn, who seems to be their version of Merlin, or Merivin, as he was called in Welsh. And they talk about him sailing off from Ireland, sailing first to Scotland. Now, somebody who'd sailed with him in the kind of boats they had back then must have come back to tell this story, because they talk about sailing to Scotland. In this book called The Travels of Merlin, The Voyage of Merlin, sorry, it talks about how it describes Scotland perfectly. It then describes the Faroe Islands, north of Scotland. It describes the Shetland Islands. And this is the interesting thing that proves that one of these fairly flimsy boats that looked a little bit like a Viking longship, but not as good, could have made it really far south, is in this book. They talk about finding floating islands of white chalk. Well, what could they be? Icebergs.
Yeah.
And they talk about, so they must have gone pretty far north. Now, they even went much further north, and they must have arrived at Iceland, because they describe arriving at a place where there is water that shoots from the ground that's boiling hot. They've got geysers there, like the same as you have at Yellowstone Park. That's one of the only places in the world there, Yellowstone Park and New Zealand. They said they didn't go there, which is where you have these things. They describe them perfectly. They then describe what's clearly a volcano erupting, and volcanoes are all over Iceland. And then they describe finally getting, well, not finally, but then eventually getting to a place where the seas are green, and they seem to be green because of a green rock that's at the bottom of the sea. And that is how Greenland first got its name, not because it was green and beautiful. And then anyway, ultimately they describe finding a foreign place with white sands that go on forever. That corresponds to the Porcupine Sands on Baffin Island in Canada. I think it's Baffin Island anyway, or Labrador, one of them. And then he describes what seems to be going down the coast of America, and finally ending up in a place that's quite warm, that seems to be somewhere like Maine. Merlin dies, he's buried there, and the other guys eventually manage to sail back to England or Britain many years later and tell the story. Well, it sounds made up, but how could they? They must have done this years before Columbus or anybody the Vikings were going there to describe places that are actually en route.
Has anybody looked for Merlin's body or the remains in Maine?
Yes. What's really interesting is that when this book came out, I had two versions of it. The original came out, then I found out something from Maine, and so I had to rewrite parts at the end of the book. Somebody from Maine who came from an island called forgot what it's called now, Mohana Island, I think it's called, a few miles off the coast of Maine, said that right next to this island, there's a smaller island called Manana Island, where there are Celtic runes that date from about 1,500 years ago that seem to mark a grave. So I thought, ended up going there. I ended up almost dying in bad weather on the seas trying to get to this place, and was shown down by the people who lived there. And they said, look, there's been a dig here back in the 19th century, and they did find bones here, and what seemed to be evidence of some kind of Celtic people from Britain or Northern Europe coming here centuries ago. So is the grave of Merlin on Manana Island. Manana Island in Native American language from that area actually means Isle of Rabbits. I don't see any rabbits there.
And I tell you real quick, that was all, because that was fascinating. I've never heard anything like that.
That's incredible.
Never heard anything like that before. And I know everything's relative, but it is funny. You've got 3 people on this podcast that live in the southeastern United States, and to hear someone say the warmer climate of Maine.
The warmer Maine.
It's just, yeah. But compared to Greenland, probably. Yep. So, Greenland, yep.
I was thinking that maybe Stephen King is the reincarnation of Merlin, who died there in Maine, where Stephen King lives.
Where he lives.
Is that where he's from?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, right. I didn't know that.
Bangor.
Bangor.
Bangor. Yeah. Bangor.
Right,
Yeah. Bangor, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. That's fascinating.
Well, let's write him and ask him. Just Steve.
So, I wonder if he knows about Merlin being there.
I don't know. Wait, I have a question for Graham. Now, given your knowledge about all this, do you think you had a past life in this time? In other words, did you come in with this interest?
Well, hold on. Let me go back. No one's asked me that before. Let me go back to where I started. I started to get interested in this sort of thing, these sort of ancient mysteries and so forth, back when I was in my 20s. I've studied at university to be a journalist. And I ended up, as you mentioned before, being a radio journalist with the BBC. Then I was offered a position as an editor of a magazine. Now, the magazine was called Strange Phenomena. I think you mentioned that too.
Right.
And I wasn't particularly interested in the subject myself necessarily, but I was there as a journalist and somebody who knew how to run a magazine. And at first, when the reporters were going out and coming back and saying, well, I've seen these weird UFOs, or we've interviewed people who've seen UFOs and ghosts and you name it, I was kind of skeptical, but I thought, no, we're supposed to write about these things, so we will. But the more I started looking into things like the paranormal, I began to think there's something in all this. But the problem was, with the paranormal, you can never really tie it down. Every time anyone does any experiments to try and prove it, they fall a bit flat. But something happened when we were doing this magazine. We were based at a place called Wolverhampton, which is a city in the centre of England. Everything seems to happen in the centre of England. I don't know why. I was born there. Most of the things revolve around here. Maybe that's something to do with reincarnation. Wolverhampton, a city in the centre of England. The magazine's offices was an old Victorian rambling building in a place called Oaks Crescent, a leafy suburban crescent in this town. Okay, now, while we were investigating this, one of the things that we started to investigate, which wasn't paranormal, it wasn't strange phenomena as such to start off with, but it was an interesting unsolved mystery. There was a story that you probably heard of the gunpowder plot with Guy Fawkes when he tried to blow up Parliament.
Right.
Yeah.
You haven't. But anyway, there was a plot to blow up the king and Parliament in 1605 that backfired, and this Guy Fawkes was caught trying to light gunpowder, and they basically they executed him. Now, when that happened, it was by Catholics trying to overcome the Protestant regime of the king at the time, James I. The Catholics at that time had a ring that had once belonged to Mary, Queen of Scots, a Catholic queen. It had a green stone on it. It was a silver ring, and it was supposed to be like a holy relic for the Catholics. It had once been in the Vatican and all sorts of things. The story was that after the gunpowder plot, when the king's men were rounding up all the conspirators, one of the people that was associated with it but wasn't actually proved to be involved. A guy called Humphrey Packington had a big Elizabethan house in the countryside of central England. He was entrusted with this ring and this stone, which was supposed to have all sorts of mystical powers, and he hid it and left a series of clues, the legend said, in his house as to where it was. And this is my first treasure hunt, and this is how I got involved in it. It just so happened that when I was looking into this, I thought, that's fascinating. And this place was open to the public now. It's an old, the old Elizabethan house, which is going to be 40 years old or something. When I went there, they said, I said, have you heard about these Humphrey Packington's clues that he left? People don't seem to think they were real, or what could they be? He says, this is a guy who ran the place. Says, I think we might have found them. I said, what do you mean? He took me to an upstairs corridor, and up there they had been doing renovations to the old building, and they pulled down all the paneling, the wood paneling on the walls, and behind it they found all these paintings that were done at exactly the time by Humphrey Packington and his friends in 1605, right after the Gunpowder Plot. And I thought, wow, what they represented basically was King Arthur. Again, this is where he first comes into things in my life. It showed a drawing or picture. It was originally in colour, but it was all black and white now. Mm-hmm. A picture of King Arthur, a young King Arthur wielding the sword Excalibur, and behind him on a hill are gathered all his knights. Huh. And the picture is called the Nine Worthies. It's written underneath it. There are the 9 knights and so forth. Okay, so we thought, God, if that's the clue, what could it mean? Ultimately, cutting a long story short, we discovered that very close to Harwington Hall, where these pictures were, there was actually a hill called Knight's Hill. Knights on the hill, King Arthur's knights. And right next to it, there was an old footbridge that would have been there in Elizabethan times, running by a lake and over a little stream called Arthur's Bridge. Oh, wow. Arthur, knights behind him. So we went to this bridge, and when we stood there, in the picture, Arthur is wielding his sword like this, and he's looking down and to his left. If you stood on the bridge and looked down and to your left, behind you is the Knight's Hill. So we're doing what he's doing, standing on Arthur's Bridge, looking down to our left. All that's down there are the foundations of this bridge. Because it took quite a long time to figure all this out. But ultimately we figured, because the number 9 is important in the name of the 9 worthies, the 9 knights, we took 9 stones along, 9 stones down. Ultimately, we were able to take out the right stone, and behind it there was this small ledge, this recess, and there was a small sword on it, or long dagger, inscribed. It was all crusted up with years of silt and sediment, but inscribed on it was the coat of arms of Mary Queen of Scots, the very person who had this ring. Ultimately, the sword had clues in it that led us to where this ring was buried in an old brass casket. And we found this. That's what got me started searching for relics.
That's fascinating.
I can see why.
Yeah.
That is a great story.
Yeah, so you mentioned Guy Fawkes. I guess he's kind of a 17th century terrorist in a way, blowing up Parliament. Isn't there a Guy Fawkes Day, though? Am I imagining that?
There is.
Okay.
It's our equivalent of the 4th of July, when you have all the fireworks.
Okay.
Right, okay.
The firecrackers and stuff. It's the 5th of November was when Guy Fawkes and his fellow conspirators, he wasn't actually the leader of it. There was a man called Robert Catesby. But Guy Fawkes was the gunpowder expert. They'd smuggled all this gunpowder into this cellar underneath the House of Parliament, where the king would be on this particular day, on the 5th of November. Barrels of the stuff. I mean, whether it would have actually really blown the House of Parliament up or just killed people who was down there, we don't know, because it never happened. But Guy Fawkes was found just before he lit the fuses by the Palace Guard, basically, and he was taken away. Now, the way he was killed, he was executed, was hanged, drawn, and quartered, which is pretty horrible. But after that, in order for people to remember the Protestant regime at the time didn't like the Catholics, who they blamed for doing this. It was only a few crazy people that wanted to do this. Most of them had nothing to do with it. But the Protestants who wanted to keep Catholics out of government basically came up with this idea. Every 5th of November from then on, we get an effigy of Guy Fawkes. You build an effigy of him, you put a mask on him, you put him on a bonfire, and you fill him full of fireworks, and you blow him up. And basically you let off all these fireworks. And we're still doing it today. Even Catholics do it. I mean, it's not as if it's got anything to do with Protestants and Catholics anymore. It's just a bit of fun, like Halloween.
That's incredible.
Remember the 5th of November, right? And the pop culture references V for Vendetta, the graphic novel by Alan Moore. Yep.
Yeah, the mask that all these people in, what is it? That sort of conspiracy people wear. Mask.
Right, yeah.
That's
the guy Fawkes, man. Yep.
Yeah. So, Graham, before we finish, I've got to ask you your thoughts on the most famous site in England, Stonehenge. Have you done any research in that area, in that famous?
I have indeed. One of my recent books is the Wisdom Keepers of Stonehenge, which basically tries to explain what it was built for and all about. Cutting a long story short, it's 5,500 years old.
We gotta have you back on to talk about all this. And wait, what's the name of the book on Stonehenge?
It seems to have been used as a kind of observatory. So you stand in the middle of it and you look at night, because back then the nights were a lot clearer than they are now. It was much warmer weather.
That's right.
So you could stand out in the night and use the stones and the way that they're arranged as sightings for where certain planets, the stars and things were on certain times of year. And it gave you a very accurate calendar for planting crops and things. But the particular crops that they were actually planting wasn't just wheat or whatever else, or barley and things. The plants that they were, that they wanted to know when to reap, harvest, sow, and so forth, were medicinal herbs, because the graves around there have been found with this pottery, and inside the pottery are are the remains of medicinal substances, cures for stomachache, headache, analgesics, all sorts of things that haven't been discovered until today. And they require a very accurate calendar of planting, cutting, harvesting, and so forth to grow. So it was kind of an ancient medical facility.
Wow.
That's interesting.
That's
But how did they build it? How did they create it? How did they move those rocks? I have a little piece of a bluestone that was from the area where the bluestones came from, but the rocks were massive, and it seems. Has there ever been any explanation of how Stonehenge was built?
Yeah, aliens. I've heard that one.
Well, you're saying the bluestones, they came from South Wales,
right,
and they were taken 200 miles almost to Stonehenge. It seemed, because the place they came from in Wales, like that little piece of stone you got there, it's a kind of it shines in a really strange way when it's wet. This is what they seem to like about it. So, but how did they move it? It's possible that they actually dragged the stones down to the sea, which is not far from where the Preseli Mountains are, where the stones were, and then they put them on rafts, and there's a river system that goes all the way up to within a couple of miles of Stonehenge. They may have sailed them there, but that's just one theory.
Yeah.
But then they still have to erect them.
Well, I'll put it this way: if you've got enough people doing nothing,
yeah, that's true.
That's what the ancient Egyptians were able to build these pyramids. I mean, if somebody in charge is determined enough, they can build almost anything.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
God, this is fascinating.
You think the boats would sink under those heavy tons?
No, I've seen somebody do it. They've actually
really?
got stones of the same size.
Wow.
Wait.
Oh.
They're pretty. They're like kind of rafts, like timber rafts.
Okay, right. Huh.
So it can be done apparently. I mean, I haven't seen it myself, but that's what they say.
Right.
See, you live in the right part of the world for this kind of investigation.
You're right at the center of.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, I've had a chance to move elsewhere, but why bother if I'm here?
Yeah, really.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, thank you.
I'd stay right where you are. This has just been great, Graham. Thank
Yeah,
you so much. We can
thank
have
you
you back
very
on
much.
and talk about your other stuff, your other books.
What is the name of this book, The Stonehenge?
Stonehenge.
The book is The Original Zodiac.
Yeah,
Oh, that's your most recent one.
yeah.
Right,
What's
That's
the
the
Stonehenge?
one we were talking about.
Right,
The
yeah.
book, which is about Stonehenge, is called Wisdom Keepers of Stonehenge.
Ah,
The book about Merlin is called Merlin and the Discovery of Avalon in the New World.
Oh, that's
And the book about King Arthur is called King Arthur, the True Story. The book about the Grail is called The Search for the Grail.
But we can find them all on Amazon, right?
But you can basically, I've got a website, grahamphillips.net, grahamphillips.net. And if you go there, all my books are on the front page of the website. You just click on them, you'll learn all about them. And all of the ways of contacting me and
Yeah,
stuff.
we'll put the link in the description
Yeah.
when we post it.
That's fine.
Thank you very much. This has
Thanks
been
so much,
fascinating,
Graham. I don't know. Now I can't just go to the dog park. I'm going to have to look for relics.
If anybody's going to move, we may just need to pick up and move over.
That's
to,
true.
the UK because one of our other favorite guests, and I'm going to blank on her last name, but Jude.
Oh,
Right.
Curvan.
Yeah.
Jude Curvan, yeah.
A physicist. We've had her on a couple of times. So yep. So I love to see when we got somebody about 8 hours offset from our time. So
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Graham.
Thank you, Graham.
And when it
Thank
comes
you
out,
very much
I'll
indeed.
send you the link.
We'll send you the link. Okay. Good
Thank
talking to you.
This is just great.
Goodbye then.
I'm gonna
Bye-bye.
look for relics. Thank you.
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, bye now.
Bye.
Thanks for joining the Mystical Underground. Visit www.themysticalunderground.com for the latest blog post and book info. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or your favorite podcast app. Listen to the podcast at podcast.themysticalunderground.com. Follow Trish and Rob on Instagram at Trish and Rob MacGregor. Follow us on Twitter at The Mystic Cast. Send email to podcast@themysticalunderground.com. And until next week, thank you for listening and stay mystical.